That last video is a brilliant example of pastiche in play and did a great job articulating that composer's teaching with technology philosophy. Another set of examples of play, pastiche, and parody comes from a campaign initially launched in October 2011 at Ohio University by their STARS program. That's Students Teaching Against Racism in Society. The campaign focused on rupturing images of racial stereotypes and featured images like these. This is not who I am, and this is not okay. This is not who I am, and this is not okay. Soon after these compelling posters were released, however, parody pieces began to emerge on the web, and an internet meme was created. This is not who I am, and this is not okay. This is not who I am, and this is not okay. Parody can also provide a space for consumers to talk back to ubiquitous advertising imagery. For instance, this is an ad for Detour protein bars. This was a print campaign that appeared in mainly men's interest magazines like GQ and Maxim. Woman 1 holds a candy bar, Woman 2 holds a Detour bar. A parody of the ad features the same two images, but the copy above Woman 1 now reads, "There's a normal-sized woman who actually eats candy." And the copy above Woman 2 now reads, "Then there's an unattainable goal created with computer software." Parody and pastiche nicely leads us into theme 4, which relates to issues of intellectual property. Obviously, the composer of the Detour ad parody may not have had the releases and the rights to reuse the ad as he or she did. Parody is, though, theoretically and legally protected under fair use. Most of what we see and hear and read and interact with is owned by someone, and those someones are, frankly, usually companies. Here's where we really start to see these themes pile up. We live in a networked digital culture where people are sharing and pastiching and playing in collaborative ways in a space Larry Lessig calls remix culture. This is a culture of derivative works where everything and anything is available to grab, mash, and mix, and where it's relatively easy to share, copy, and redistribute media. Siva Vaidyanathan says, hey, this has always been the case. This is how creativity happens. He also admits, though, that the context for creativity today has changed. Our access to others' materials is accelerated through digital space. Think theme 1, but at the same time, it's more restricted due to changes in copyright law, and that's theme 4. So writing requires us as composers to draw upon multiple modes of representation and meaning making, and we're composing in digital spaces that allow us to pull in audio and video and still images and text and more, but we might not ourselves always have the rhetorical and technical skills and tools to create from scratch all this media. And sometimes we might be composing in a context where we need to, for rhetorical effect or purposes, use someone else's materials. We might need to borrow the work of others. Steve Westbrook warns us that copyright is our problem, because if we let overly restrictive copyright laws chill our students and ourselves, we can effectively be silencing them and silencing the ways they want to compose. And this situates them and us more as consumers of media and less as producers and composers of media. Okay, let me offer just one example of the potential chilling effects of intellectual property in our composition landscape. Most of you are probably familiar with this now iconic image from Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. The image launched 2 weeks before Super Tuesday in February 2008, the day on which the largest simultaneous number of U.S. presidential primary elections were held. The image was created by Shepard Fairey, an artist who created the poster for a Get Out the Vote rally. He screen printed 350 copies and sold them that day, then used the money to screen print 4,000 more copies to give away. The image went absolutely viral. Original screen prints were selling for up to $6,000 online. The image appeared on a book published later in 2008. A version appeared on the cover of The Advocate in 2009. A version appeared on a 2010 episode of Futurama. One of the posters was acquired by the Smithsonian Institution for its National Portrait Gallery. Another traveled galleries in the U.S., hitting some of the largest major modern art museums. Meanwhile, however, Shepard Fairey was being sued because he illegally used a copyright-protected photograph of Obama to create the poster. The photographer publicly stated he was impressed with Fairey's work, but his photo was essentially a work for hire for the Associated Press, which sought credit and compensation for use of the original 2006 image. Fairey actually countersued the Associated Press, claiming that his poster was a fair use of the original photograph, and he defended himself on the Colbert Report by saying, "I'm a patriotic criminal." Meanwhile, on the internet, Fairey created a sensation and a new design paradigm. Eventually, the two settled out of court. And there's a lot more to the story, a lot more. And I have so many more examples related to copyright and visual rhetoric. But in the interest of time, I'm going to hold off. If you guys are interested, we can talk a lot more about copyright and intellectual property and visual rhetoric when we meet in residence. And theme 5, the complexities of visual rhetoric research. Heidi McKee has written a lot about research ethics and research dynamics, and in a great piece published in Computers and Composition, she extends to the long-standing discussion about research ethics in digital space and talks about the shifting terrain of research in digital spaces. Her points in practice force us to address issues like how we represent research participants and researchers as they appear in different spaces, under different pseudonyms and with different avatars or tunes or characters or screen names. Another key issue is an issue with any type of research, but I think this is most powerfully felt in digital visual research, and that's putting brackets around all of the available amounts of material. Knowing when, where, and how to draw a line and say, this is how my research is bounded, is really tough. Yet another consideration is how to protect research participants. If you're representing your research in multimodal format, which makes sense if you're engaged in researching multimodal spaces, how do you protect the identities of your participants? Linked to that is the presence of other actors and third-party presences. Our screens are cluttered with icons and ads and more. How do we attend or not to the presence of those other things, other actors, other presences? And issues of informed consent are implicated here too. Most of our human subjects documents and approaches fall short because they were designed first for research in the sciences and second for traditional research methods and spaces, and digital spaces scramble these processes. But if and when we can, I think we should think of these things not as limitations or problems, but as exciting challenges. Let's think about ways we can productively, actively engage these issues. And maybe doing digital visual research requires us to think like the anti-cabooses that Cirque described, invested in modifiable, changeable spaces that bend to the wills of inhabitants, that allow us to experiment in 1,000 ways, modifying life, bending consistently. A good example of two scholars who've done so is CHERYL GEISLER and SHAUN, who have a great chapter on video capture technologies and how to put two screen recording devices for creating rich records of how composing happens. GEISLER and SLATTERY in their work were referring to video capture, but a few years ago, on honestly a whim, I emailed our undergrad and grad email list and rack and said, hey, if you can and you don't mind, pause what you're doing and capture your screen and send me it. A few students did, and 2 students took a moment to capture their work. So student A described what she had open. Her dictionary, which was only partly helpful as she describes it, spam infecting help ticket she was working on for a proprietary campus software system, her attempts to apply time management tips to her life, a couple of chat windows, professional and personal, and more. Another student sent me a capture, and his annotation read, I wasn't working on anything. This is generally how it goes for me. Word, Photoshop, Firefox, for reference, searching, then some recreational stuff, mail, iTunes. This is today's composing environment. This is generally how it goes for many writers. a rich digital visual tapestry. Think about how much we don't know about what happens in this space, how many research portals this opens up for us. Okay, so those were my 5 dominant themes. Your first activity for the second week of class is to add a dominant theme. What's missing here? What's a dominant theme you would argue for based on your experiences, based on this week's readings? What's a trend within this digital visual world in which we live and are negotiating? A trend or theme that affects our research, our scholarship, our teaching? You can decide how to craft your theme, but I'd like for you to adopt the 2-part model that I've tried to follow here. That is, your theme should include some theoretical scaffolding, some quotes, some guiding theory, and your theme should also include some examples. How you package your theme is entirely up to you. You can bundle your theme in a few PowerPoint slides or a web page, a blog post, a short digital movie. You can host your work on our blog, or you can upload it to Angel in the Week 2 online folder.